People's domestic spaces can tell us an awful lot about them. Are they seeking out areas of peace and calm with the items they collect and display? Do the items they collect and display show us something about what they've done in their lives, the kinds of things they like to do? Is the way they've arranged their objects indicative of something about them as a person? Does it tell us about the times in which they lived? These aren't from my home, but short clips kindly lent to me by teachers at Moreton. This project is all about domestic personal spaces. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
What's up, arty people? Welcome to your 4-week taster block of sessions for your A-Level Fine Art. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ruth Mills and I teach A-Level Art at Moreton Hall along with my fabulous colleague Emma Howarth. This project is going to be all about identity, curiosity and spaces. In this project, I'm going to invite you to transform a domestic space, such as the inside of a cupboard or a drawer, into a representation of your identity during the COVID-19 lockdown. This will give you the opportunity to experiment with materials, as well as investigate how artists, as well as being inspired by both the wonderful and the everyday, can collect and document objects in order to push their work forwards. In this project, by assembling and documenting objects that represent your experience, you will be able to imbue them, give them a sense of meaning. As well as this opportunity will give you materials to work back from and ideas. A key element of fine art is a sense of curiosity. Curiosity can also mean concern. Our concerns as artists might be a concern for things that already exist, a concern for things that don't exist, as in things in our imagination, a concern for things we cannot see, such as a feeling or an emotion, or a concern for the strangeness of the everyday, or a concern for the mundanity of the everyday. By using a domestic space, you will place the idea for this project within something that you can very easily control and understand. The first task is to explore the work of several artists who've used domestic spaces in very interesting ways. I'm sure this will give you lots to think about, and I'll catch up with you again after you've looked at some artists' works. Enjoy!
In this 1939 painting by Pierre Bonnard, in the intimisme or intimism style, Bonnard focuses on the most private of spaces, the interior of a cupboard. His use of light and colour gives us a calm, light-infused painting of a beautifully private interior space. In this painting of a Wunderkammer or wonder cabinet of curiosities from the Renaissance, we see objects that represent scientific intellect, travel and curiosity. This painting would have reflected the status of the owner. Here, American artist Amy Silman's work is based on from above views of the insides of drawers. These abstract aerial views are on a large scale and suffused with colour and confusion. They take a lot from Picasso's. This assembled artwork is by Joseph Cornell, who is associated with the American pop artists. He was made for lockdown. An untrained artist, he made his works from his collections of scraps and curious objects. Despite his lack of training, he was a favourite in the 60s New York art scene. Zoe Buckman's Every Curve is all about clothing and femininity. Cupboards stuffed with clothing might show us a lot about a person. Is your wardrobe full of ball gowns or band t-shirts? In this piece, artist Wangechi Mutu uses the structure of a chest of drawers to present her work. The images behind the drawer-like shapes are of the artist herself throwing pigment linked to the concept of her black skin at the wall. The drawer-like presentation, does it make you more or less curious? Why? In this piece, artist Yayoi Kusama shows how she spent much of her life in hospital. This large sculpture shows the inside of a door covered with snake-like forms made from foil. They certainly seem to me as something that Kusama might wish to escape, a kind of lockdown. What space would you fill in this style? Finally, I've chosen Jordan Bushka, a contemporary artist from America. Her work presents clue-like paintings of personal objects, stacks of books, and the insides of drawers. As well as presenting a non-representational portrait, Bushka's work also refers to consumerism.
Okay, so which artist did you like best? Did you like the Antimism painting by Pierre Bonnard? Its beautiful red cupboard, suffused with light and showing us domesticity at its calmest and most serene. Did you like the work from the Renaissance, the Wunderkammer or Wonder Cabinet, the objects in it showcasing the intellectual curiosity and well-travelled nature of the person that commissioned the work? Did you like the fabulous paintings by Amy Silman, American contemporary artist, whose views from above, aerial views of the insides of drawers, show the confusion and clutter that we might see every day? They draw a lot from the work of Picasso and his synthetic cubism. Did you like the works of Joseph Cornell, a reclusive and shy man, not formally trained, built for lockdown, who seemed to collect random objects and put them together in little assembled works of great meaning? Did you like the work of Wangechi Mutu, who is an American artist exploring race and identity? Her photographs, hidden behind drawers that could not be opened, gave me a sense of curiosity. I wanted to open them, and yet I couldn't. What about Yayoi Kusama, a Japanese artist who has spent much of her life in psychiatric institutions? That great imposing hospital door, covered with snaky forms, certainly made me feel like there was something to escape from. And finally, we saw the work of Jordan Bushka, a contemporary American artist whose representational paintings show us objects that we can recognise and that hint at the nature of the owner. They also make us think about consumerist culture and the stress of living in a consumerist society. As part of this project, you'll have to pick an artist. I'll put their names on the next slide for you. Which one do you think you might pick?
This is my cupboard, and I've emptied the DVDs out of it and filled it full of things that represent my identity during this coronavirus and the lockdown. Inside the cupboard I've put some things that represent what I've done with myself during this time, and I've tried to make it a nicely arranged set of objects so it's something interesting to work from. It doesn't matter if you haven't got a nice cupboard, you could just use a shelf. The drawer would be absolutely beautiful. So you can see here that inside the top shelf of the cupboard I've got a key
obviously representing the lockdown, a candle holder and a candle burned down to represent the length of time, and at the back I've put a tiny mirror because I found this time to be very introspective. I spent a lot of time on my own drawing and working, so I've had lots of time to reflect on things personal to me. Then I've got tea bags, just a pile of tea bags. It's kept me going through those long days of online lessons and working alone when I'm used to working with lots of people. My poor battered old headphones, thank goodness I've had them. I live in a rural area. There's a profusion of growth outside my house in my constantly needing weeding garden. So I've put some roses, some things that actually grow as weeds outside my house, like that nasturtium, to represent how even in this time when we've all been stopped from doing things, nature has just carried on. At the bottom I've put my trusty Doc Martin boots. I spent a lot of time walking. I think they're kind of part of me anyway. My brushes. Obviously I've spent a lot of time painting and making. Wooden spoons. I think we've all spent a bit more time in the kitchen. And finally my trainers. Thank goodness I'm a runner. It's kept me going during this time. You can see that I've arranged the objects quite carefully with gaps in between them. I'll probably play around with it a bit more before I start to work from it. So your first job is to create a setup or a still life using a drawer, a cupboard, some kind of concealed and private space that represents your identity during this COVID-19 lockdown period. If you wanted to, you could choose someone else's identity if you didn't want to represent yourself, but I do think it's better in fine art when our work comes from the heart. Think about the gaps between things, moving things around, turning them around, lifting them up and down with things underneath them. Underneath my boots there, there's actually just a pile of DVDs holding everything up. I've covered it with newspaper. So be inventive, be creative. I'm excited to see what you come up with.
Even though I'm pleased with how it looks, it's important to revisit your ideas. Now I've made my first domestic space installation of items that represent my experience of the coronavirus lockdown. I'm going to go away and have a think, review what kind of mood and feeling I want my cupboard or space to show, and rebuild it with a few less objects and a simpler design. When I reviewed the cupboard installation I made before, I felt I had just included the things I had enjoyed doing in lockdown. I've done lots of running and painting, but I didn't really show how I felt. At times it's been confusing, and I've certainly had some spiky emotions, hence the inclusion of this spiky blackthorn. Something many people have commented on is how, although these times have been very difficult, there have been positives for many people, such as spending more time in the outdoors or with their families, or seeing how people can pull together to support key workers and the NHS. For that reason, I wanted to make a magical private space. So I put fairy lights in my cupboard, filled it full of very spiky blackthorn, which has a sculptural quality, and after that layered up beautiful weeds which grow even in the driest of areas, roses from the garden, leaves spiked on the blackthorn, and of course my trusty headphones I couldn't have survived without. Can you spot other things hidden in it? Can you see the key?
I hope that gave you lots to think about and that you enjoyed looking at the works of artists such as Bonnard, Wangechi Mutu and Yayoi Kusama. There were so many ideas in their works, weren't there? All so different. So your project is to choose one of those artists and to create a transformed installation that's a collection of objects in a space, in a domestic space such as a shelf, drawer or cupboard. It shouldn't be big and it shouldn't be complicated. The simpler ideas are often the best. You might wish to start by making mind maps or lists, and we'll discuss your ideas in class. You might wish to work as I have and actually build a little installation in a space and then go away and have a think, mull your ideas over. Allow yourself to consider different possibilities and to simplify your idea after you've had a go. I liked the interior space I made with thorns and lights and natural forms. I might include more weeds in it to show the strength of things that have grown up during this lockdown time. It will be interesting for me to draw and paint from, and that's what we'll be doing in our next few sessions. We'll go back to class now and we'll have plenty of opportunities to come up with ideas and help each other out, and for you to ask any questions that you might have.